Hi, my name is Maurice Stierl, and I work as a researcher at the Institute for Migration Research and Intercultural Studies at the University of Osnabrück in Germany. Okay, so when thousands of people die at Europe's borders every year, there are many thousands more who mourn their loss. So relatives, loved ones, friends, and also entire communities, usually in the global south. And then there are also others, who may have never known the person who died or disappeared, but who are still struggling against the regime of borders that killed or disappeared them. And so over the last years or really decades, people and groups that are affected in these different ways by border violence have come together to collectively remember and mourn those who are no longer with us. And so I try to find a word or an expression to characterize practices that combine grief and protest. And so I thought of the term grief activism. And of course, Judith Butler's work has been also very important for me. She has written about how grief does not need to be something that is just done in private and hidden away, but that can furnish, in fact, as she writes, a sense of a political community of a complex order. And so in my work, I try to sketch out some of the ways in which these sort of complex political communities can come about as a response to the dying and disappearing at Europe's borders. So CommemorAction is a term, that combines the notions commemoration and action. And so it's about remembering collectively, and it's about taking action together. So where exactly this term first emerged, I think is difficult to say, but what is clear is that it emerged out of a lived practice. So through activist political networks that have engaged and organized around border violence and death already for a very long time, even if they have not used this particular term. And so over the last years, the term has become used very widely and in very different places and contexts. And how they organize and how a commemoration can look like really depends on the local actors. And it's often also a reflection of local traditions of mourning and local traditions of protesting. But what I think is really crucial about these practices is really their translocal connection, right? So as painful as this sort of political practice is, this is also the strength. So in the moment of grief, we collectively try to overcome the borders that have caused this suffering in the first place. Over the last decades, a lot of research has already been produced on this issue. And I think by now we know quite well how the mechanics work that ultimately kill people on the move. But what I feel is really lacking is a real transnational effort and structure that helps relatives to identify the dead, to search for the missing. And, I'm very much aware that this is an extremely difficult task. Of course, because border deaths often occur in remote spaces. But still, I feel that especially international organizations have failed to find, really effective ways to collaborate across institutional and other borders. And so this has meant that it's often left to activists and social movements and relatives who are searching and who are trying to find answers. And of course, given the incredibly low chance of finding someone, either alive or dead, and the immense trauma that relatives experience, this is an incredibly hard task that should not be left to activist groups. And so I do think that, there's a real failure to do justice to these relatives and their immense pain. And I do think that this is a task for the future that a lot of different actors need to take seriously.